Ask not what the World Economic Forum can do for you, but what you can do for the World Economic Forum.
So looking at a Davos 2024, the 54th annual WEF summit meeting and their very telling theme, rebuilding trust. I mean, astounding, right?
We must rebuild trust, and that's actually the theme of our meeting. We have to rebuild trust.
Can you rebuild what just isn't there and never was? I mean, at first glance, it's truly laughable, contemptible, outrageous, creepy how out of touch they seem to be, creepy how arrogant they seem to remain in spite of everything.
When did the word expert become almost an insult?
When the real agenda is just the same old, and there's no reason to, quote, trust it. And so as tempting as that theme is to just throw back in the face of Klaus Schwab, that people don't trust WEF or their agenda, that they reject it, that they're protesting it, it's naive to pretend that that's just all that rebuilding trust is really about, or that it's as simple as the most straightforward of definitions, a firm belief in integrity, ability, character, the condition of having confidence placed in one in which confidence is placed, the opposite of having violated a public trust. These are the first definitions that pull up online, and yeah, there's been a colossal failure there, rebuilding trust. As the Telegraph succinctly said in its headline, the global super-rich want to rebuild trust. Good luck with that. There's the AP connecting the WEF's big artistic wall with all these slogans and words centered around rebuilding trust. It was full of buzzwords that they pointed out people said smacked of, quote, empty talk. Critics say the annual meeting are the preserve of business chieftains who covet greater wealth and politicians who want to stay in power. As Alex Clement of G0 reminds us, trust, as we keep hearing, is broken. Only 16% of Americans trust their government, down 60 points from peak trust in the mid-1960s. Fewer than a third of Americans trust each other. Meanwhile, half of Americans say the media deliberately misleads them, and fewer than a quarter say journalists have society's interest at heart. Trust is a big issue society-wide, but especially with the elites that are epitomized at this point by WEF. And yet, in spite of all this, at this Rebuilding Trust meeting, the World Economic Forum in their 2024 Global Risk Assessment Report identified misinformation and disinformation as the #1 most severe global risk over the next 2 years.
You can search the web with real and organic search results and do it without anyone tracking your activity or data. We ourselves use Atlas VPN to protect our data online. Atlas VPN is more than just any other VPN. It blocks all malicious links, ads, and trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to spy on or steal your data. If you want to grab Atlas VPN, they have a great deal going on right now for just $1.70 a month and 6 months extra for free. We've provided a link in the description you can use to grab this deal. Try it out with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Not only does it protect your data, it also keeps your searches completely private. Also, protect unlimited devices at once. No limits are set. One subscription only for the best price. That's why we use Atlas. Oh, did we forget to mention it saves you a lot of money booking online? It's that easy. Grab Atlas VPN using the link in the description and secure your data today.
Disinformation makes money, and that's one of the, we need to follow that money, and we need to work with in particularly the global advertising industry, that a lot of those dollars go to pretty bad content. And so you can work really hard on exclusion lists or inclusion lists, just to really try to focus ad dollars and challenge the global advertising industry all around the world to focus their ad dollars towards the good news and information, the accurate and relevant news and information.
And with this in mind, Reuters pointed out all the mistrust going on by so many different players, different countries, different parts of the world, different sectors of societies, and yet all of them have in common a pushback against technology. They wrote in part, the highest level of mistrust about the management of innovation was in the United States. The report said examples of pushback against technology included Beijing dropping out after online pushback, U.S. Republican positions against electric vehicles, and Hollywood's writers' battle against the use of artificial intelligence in writing scripts, because it's also just pathetic. Resistance to innovation is political, the survey said. Be that as it may, the underlying factor is a distrust in technology as the power of our society. Presumably, the WEF elites and their quest for domination don't want more pushback, so therefore it makes sense to rebuild trust. But even they know that's not going to easily happen. They invited people this year. Not only did the Heritage president, Kevin Roberts, go there, but he said some very pointed things.
One thing that Davos, you might say, and the people come here to stand up for is liberal democracy.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy.
Kevin Roberts wrote in part, the infamous, hypocritical, self-avowed Marxists, private jet environmentalists, and genocide-adjacent humanitarians want to hear from the Heritage Foundation how they can rebuild trust with everyday Americans against whom they have weaponized their institutions, with an institution that everyday Americans perceive as hostile. Good luck rebuilding trust from that. In my view, this is part of the game. I don't think they're concerned about everyday Americans viewing them as hostile. When you really dig into it, their supposed agenda of trust really amounts to putting it back onto the users, onto dissenters, onto online speech, as though that is the problem. That's why they've centered on misinformation and disinformation as being the biggest risk in the very year that they look to rebuild trust. An unelected, unaccountable global elite who parade annually on stage at their global forum that appears to impose or at least cheerlead some collectivizing, controlling, centralizing, freedom-destroying, constitution-circumventing policies that benefit primarily an already powerful and extremely wealthy corporate elite and their most subservient political figureheads. They mostly don't care what we think. So how can they really be looking to rebuild trust on that level? They primarily just need enough trust and consensus to roll this new phase forward without obstacles before there's no turning back.
The good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more, so we can come together and design and do beautiful things together. The bad news is that in every single country they were polling, the majority of people trusted that elite less. So we can lead, but if people aren't following, we're not going to get to where we want to go.
But on another level, Klaus Schwab's speech strongly suggests a different definition of trust altogether. Reading the words of Klaus Schwab, listening to the words that he spoke, comes off much more like that of a trust of a foundation, of an estate or an asset that's entrusted, given over for management. Or perhaps it speaks to yet another definition of trust, that of an organization formed explicitly for the purpose of regulating the supply and price of commodities, such as a sugar trust, etc. A combination, a secretive cum conspiratorial board profiting off of artificially manipulated economies. Is that what this is about? Our future, the direction of our shared earth, our rights and political systems upon it, being held as a property in trust is held. Is that what this is really about?
To break this cycle, we need a paradigm shift. We must rebuild trust, and that's actually the theme of our meeting. We have to rebuild trust. Trust in our future.
What does he mean? To whom and to what exactly is he referring?
Trust is not just a feeling. Trust is a commitment to action, to belief, to hope. To achieve this, we must rediscover and embrace the narrative that has driven humanity since its inception, acting as trustees for a better future.
Did you hear that?
Acting as trustees for a better future.
He says,
This narrative isn't about short-term gains or individual successes. It is about stewardship. To rebuild trust, there is a fundamental need to embody trusteeship, which means to care for the greater good. Let's use this annual meeting to rebuild trust by exercising our trusteeship individually and collectively. For safeguarding the future of humanity and nature. Thank you.
This interpretation of a trusteeship, a stewardship, a combination trust recalls very much the 1992 UNSAID conference and the video about it done by George Hunt.
This is the logo of the Earth Summit. This is not a dove in their Earth Summit logo. It is a hand.
The United Nations Conference on Environmental Development, whose motto and logo was "In our hands."
In whose hands? Who is the we in this motto?
Literally showing the concept of in their hands, a global worldwide environmental trust, one that is managed by banking interests and other management interests, in the name of tackling, quote, truly global systemic problems that they have determined can only be, quote, solved through a big enough net, with a scale too big to control through mere democratic energies, right? Just as Schwab said this year in 2024.
The concept of trust and trusteeship compels us to think beyond borders and beyond our lifetimes.
That's a jurisdictional boundary outside of nation states and traditional rights, which is very troubling because they're not defined. There's very little restrictions in what they could do there with their trust. If you think it through, there's a real problem there for us little people, for the individuals, for our personal lives, and especially for our rights in the scheme of this whole thing that's become our lives with these people in the mix. That a word like trust is being used so pointedly yet deceptively with its own hidden agenda, just the usage of the word trust, and everyone, in a sense, trusting that rebuilding trust has just a surface level meaning is itself kind of upsetting, honestly.
We must rebuild trust, and that's actually the theme of our meeting. We have to rebuild trust. Trust, acting as trustees. The concept of trust and trusteeship as trustees of the future, trust as trustees.